Welcome to the Metaphysics Hour. I'm your host, Rory. With me today, I have a special guest. I have Chung the Tongue. And Chung, how are you, my friend?
I am good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So to give my audience a little bit of a kind of background in Chung, he is a YouTuber, and I discovered him actually just last week, and I loved some of his content. And so I thought to myself, I really want to interview him because he has a fascinating life, and I want to ask him some questions. So that was the genesis behind this thought. And thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me.
Absolutely, Rory. Thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And so a little bit about me for those of you that might be new to me. I'm an author, published my first book in 2007. I've been studying metaphysics since 2004 and been teaching professionally since 2005. So I got almost 2 decades of teaching. Right now I'm a life coach, dream interpreter. You can find me on Fiverr, and I'll plug myself later. But essentially, I'm into metaphysics, and this channel is dedicated to consciousness. And when I came across Chung, I saw a lot of things about him that I admired, and I wanted to figure out how he got there. Because, can I ask you what your age is?
Yeah, for sure. I'm 22 years old.
Okay, so I was right. So you're 22, because you must have said that in a video. And when I was talking to my girlfriend earlier today, I was like, he's a younger guy. He's, I think, 22 or something like that. At least he looks 22.
hmm
And she was like, oh, okay. And knowing that you're 22, I feel like you have a lot of street smarts, a lot of wisdom for a 22-year-old. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to cover is
Yeah.
how did you amass this information? Because in this wisdom, because not everybody by the age of 22, especially men, we don't necessarily have it all figured out, or we don't even have a good strategy
Yeah.
in terms as it relates to dating, as it relates to self-esteem,
Yeah.
and as it relates to kind of being who you are and
hmm
owning them. Because those are the 3 things I really wanted to get into detail with.
Yeah.
Like, how did you get to be who you are as a 22-year-old? And I know it's a really broad, basic question, but what do you think?
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you asking. You're right, man. I do have a lot of street smarts. I have book smarts, of course, but like a lot of street smarts, and I am very mature for my age. And I appreciate you saying that I have wisdom. Can I ask you real quick how old you are?
I am 37, going to be 38 this year.
Wow, nice. I like the little goatee, man.
Thank
Is
you.
it a full beard?
Uh, kind of. I don't grow so well on the right side. The left side, I grow a little bit better. But man, when
Nice.
I was in high school, I had some friends that they could do like ZZ tops, just full beards, and I was so
Yeah.
jealous that they could have facial hair. So I was like 25 before I could grow a beard.
Yeah, no, it's impressive, man. I always compliment, guys whenever I see, like they got a beard or something, because I know how much effort goes into it. And me myself, and a lot of Asian guys, we try to grow beards, but we have a lot of difficulty growing like very full, thick beards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And
absolutely, man.
that's another beautiful thing I think about how you think, just in the little bit that I've known you, is that you're trying to give guys compliments. I was talking to my girlfriend just I think it was yesterday, and saying, well, guys normally don't get compliments
hmm
unless it's from their significant other, or
Yeah.
maybe a parent, or maybe if they did something really stellar at work. But
hmm
we don't really get strangers approach us unless you're like super attractive.
hmm
um, we don't get those types of compliments on a regular basis. So I appreciate you thinking in that way.
Absolutely, man. It's like men's mental health is something that matters a lot to me, and it's like, guys, we don't get enough encouragement. It's like one of the things that I kind of want to change with the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to me, one of the first questions that I wanted to talk about, and you've kind of already started to address it, is self-esteem. Like, you said something in one of your videos that just like stopped my mind from multitasking, right? Like, you just claimed everything about your physical body in a way that was like, did that man just do that? And it was mind blowing,
hmm
seriously mind blowing. So what it told me about you is that you have high self-esteem, and I wanted you to just kind of tell me what that journey's been like for you, and why that kind of in some ways seems like it was the impetus to create this channel.
I appreciate it, man. So that's the thing, right? Man. I always feel a little bit guilty whenever I talk about the things that I went through, because I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable or to feel bad. And like I want to preface this by saying I've been through a lot in my life, but that doesn't discredit anybody else. It's not a competition of like traumas, right? But I am literally like I established myself kind of like the most relatable dating coach because I'm short, I'm ugly, I'm Asian, and I don't have like any genetic benefits, right? So it's like if it worked for me, it can work for anybody. But what happened in my life is that at the very crux of everything, I come from a third world country, right? So I come from the country of Myanmar, where I'm literally a war refugee. And if anybody doesn't know about Myanmar, it's stuff, very bad stuff. Sylvester Stallone actually filmed a movie about it in Rambo 4, and it's like it's stuff like war crimes, human genocide, very bad stuff happened there. But I was able to come to the U.S. at the age of 4. I'm very blessed to be able to say that. But my biological father, he had a lot of unresolved trauma and stuff, right? So, and a lot of things that happened, dealing with racism and all that. And what happened was he put that trauma onto myself and his family. He abused me, he abused my mom and my sisters. And it's like as a kid, I went through so much to where I had to be a man. I had to be the man at an early age. It's like in order to survive, I had to grow up really fast. It's just like everything kind of came from there.
Excellent, excellent. And that makes sense as to why at 22 years old, I could tell that there's a lot of wisdom. Sometimes people are kind of forced to grow up quicker because life demands it. They're
Yeah.
not sheltered. And so you and I kind of come from opposite standpoints in this as well, is that, I was born here. My parents, I think, are third generation or whatever.
Hmm.
So I had some insulation here. Like we didn't come from a war-torn country.
Yeah.
Maybe my great grandparents came from, some sort of feudal system, of course, because that's
Hmm.
what was happening back in those days. But I admire people that had to grow up quicker because I literally kind of got out of my parents' house at, I guess it was 20 when I left. And I was like, I know really nothing. I've lived such a sheltered life, right? Like parents have been together at that time, it was like 30 some odd years. And again, I don't say this to disassociate myself from you, but
No
just
worries, no worries.
to recognize that our upbringing means something.
Hmm.
But there's a famous quote, and I forget who said it. It's essentially that if once you leave the house, once you leave that trauma, there's no like denying that the trauma has physiological and psychological
Hmm.
elements. And as a metaphysician, I can see the different layers to that. But there is an element of responsibility that says
Hmm.
once I leave that environment, it's up to me
Hmm.
as to whether or not I want to live in that mindset or if I want to move into a different mindset.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And like a lot of guys on the internet, they're calling me stuff like, and I'm not part of the manosphere, right? I'm not any of the pills, like, but they call me blue pill, right? They say that I'm the blue pill dating coach. I'm naive. I don't understand female nature. It's like, you don't understand where I come from. Like, it's like, you think about it, right? If I can be very positive, I can joke around and stuff like that. Think about like some of the happiest people have gone through the worst things, but they choose to be happy, because it's like, at the end of the day, like we kind of need that, you know? But you're
Yeah.
definitely right. When it comes to like your traumas, right? That's kind of a thing that they say in like psychology, or counseling. It's like you're not responsible for the things that happen to you, but you are responsible for your the way that you react to it.
Exactly. Yeah, the first degree that I got from the School of Metaphysics, because that's where I got my education. I was there for 8 years, from 20 to 28. First degree is called a respondere degree. It's essentially Latin for one who responds.
Hmm.
In other words, it's the same concept that we can't control everything that happens in our life, but we do have the opportunity to control. And maybe if some people don't like that word, kind of go from a softer word like guide our own reactions,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes that's requiring ourselves to take in a deep breath and center ourselves before we do anything with it, because that's where that physical abuse would come from,
Hmm.
is where somebody is, like you said, traumatized, but they're not willing to take a step back and realize that it's
Yeah.
not as bad as it seems inside our primitive brains.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, like hurt people, it's like you either take care of your traumas, you either deal with it, you heal from it, or you're going to repeat the cycle.
Okay. I love it. I love it. So I haven't heard the criticism that you're a blue pillar, and I don't even know if that is a criticism, but I did remember you saying something that you weren't any flavor of the rainbow as far as the pills, the blue pill, the
Yeah.
red pill, the black pill.
I'm not a
And
part of the manosphere.
some of the people that listen to this on my side have no clue even what the manosphere is.
Hmm.
So if you would give your perspective, since your channel is really dedicated, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's dedicated to helping men or women just understand dating and understand it from what your personal experience is and some of like the universals that you can draw from that.
So yeah, so the purpose of the channel, right? So the channel was founded upon positive Asian male representation, but and I thought a little further, and it's like, you know what? I want to do more than just that, right? So the goal of the channel really is to help good men develop healthy relationships with beautiful women of character via self-improvement, without dealing with like stuff like negative stereotypes about their body or their ethnicity or whatever. And it's like it's basically proving that no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, of course barring exceptions like physical disabilities, right? But even then, anybody can succeed in regards to dating, and anybody can attract a beautiful woman of character. And when I say beautiful, I don't mean hot or sexy, right? Because there's a very important distinction. You can date girls that look like actresses, or you can date girls that just look like average girls, right? It's up to you to determine what beauty is to you. But no matter what, you can achieve what you want as long as you put your mind to it.
I can see why, and that's beautiful, and I love that. It's a great mission statement, one of the healthiest I've seen out there as far as dating goes, and I'm talking like really popular channels
Hmm.
in my mind as well. So you have something really beautiful and powerful, really. But I could also see why people in the quote unquote manosphere would not like what you said, because
Yeah.
in the red pill, and this is all about kind of, and this is my interpretation. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but this is my interpretation. The manosphere is about men that feel ostracized and put at a disadvantage, and so they're trying to take some of their ownership and take
Mhm.
some of their power back. And so then you have people that would self-identify as red pill or black pill,
Yeah.
and that's kind of really the manosphere
Mhm.
as far as I can tell. And the red pill is really about there's understanding female nature as they describe it,
Mhm.
and black pill is all about like looks are everything. And
Mhm.
so specifically the black pill video that I watched of you was when Wheat Waffles
Mhm.
did a facial,
Yeah.
um what do you call it, a facial
Face
scale,
rating.
face rating, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that was when I really noticed that, like, oh, this guy has high self-esteem,
Thank you.
because when somebody gives you what would be arguably, in Wheat Waffles terminology, below average, I think, what were you rated as out
He
of
rated
10?
me a 4.5, but people were saying that he was just trying to be nice.
Right. And when I took my assessment of you, obviously I haven't seen you in real life, but I looked at you and I was like, if I was just going to be objective and just be my authentic self, I would say like a 6 to 7 overall. Right. Like
I appreciate it.
that's my experience of
Mhm.
you. Right. And so,
Yeah.
like you said earlier, that we beauty is in some ways in the eye of the beholder. But what I love so much about what you did is that you just you said things about your ethnicity, about your height, about the size of your penis, and just was like, and you're just like that's okay.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm working with. And
Hmm.
you did it from a genuine place of understanding
Yeah.
that, like, and this is where I would get a little bit metaphysical and say that the creator of all life created all things equally. Doesn't mean that we show up with equal outcomes, but it does mean that we have equal opportunity in this plane. But the essence of us, the spirit
Hmm.
of us, is equal. Like
Yeah.
and that's like a Jesus lesson in some ways. It's like the least among you is just as valuable as the greatest among you.
Hmm.
And to me, I felt like you really understood that concept, and
Yeah.
in a way that didn't dim your light, but it actually allowed your light to come out. And when we were talking off air, I was like, well, that's one thing I know women are attracted to in my personal experience is confidence, is
Hmm.
like person being a man that
Yeah.
understands his mission. And especially if you've gone through the fire of trials and tribulation and come out unbroken or
Hmm.
come out like forged. And
Yeah.
that's the feeling I get when I watch your stuff. It's like, oh, this man's been forged
Yeah.
in the fire.
That's the thing is like, like when somebody, talks about my looks or whatever, it's like they call me delusional, right? Because it's like, oh man, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't understand girls. It's like, you do not understand. Like I have all the proof, I have all the receipts. It's like, I make very bold claims, but I can back it up. But it's like when people, like they talk about my appearance, and remember in that video, I intentionally gave them the ugliest pictures of me, the side profile, everything. Did not, get a haircut in 2 weeks, did not take a shower before I took that. It's like the ugliest pictures of me on on video. And it's like no dating coach out there will do that. And it's like, why would I intentionally give the ugliest pictures of me out into the internet for people to completely roast me and still be able to laugh it off?
Right, right. And so the question is why? Why did you do that?
It's because I want to prove that anybody can succeed. All you have to do is put in the work.
Excellent. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And that follows up with a metaphysical principle that, thought is cause and the physical is its like manifest.
Hmm.
Essentially, if you think it and do the necessary steps, you can get to the achievement of
Hmm.
that goal. Now, there are going to be things that are going to make it more difficult, and sometimes there are going to be things that are going to make it easier. And that's individual, like on an individual basis. But if you have a dream of something, you can make progress towards it. I've
Hmm.
always I've wanted to be a best-selling author for well before I published my first book.
Hmm.
And by no stretch of the imagination, I think last time I looked, I was ranked at like 3 millionth on Amazon. But that's still closer than, where I was before when I wasn't even at the bottom of the list.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. It's progress every day.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
love your attitude about that. And I just hope people can um, consider what you're talking about because it's so important to realize that you can achieve things
Hmm.
if you believe you can
Hmm.
actually achieve them. And then you do
Yeah.
have to do steps. Like it's not just like sitting in your house or sitting in your apartment and doing no work for it.
Hmm.
You do have to do work. Like you do work. And
Yeah.
um, that is something I appreciate.
I appreciate it, man. Can I explain the manosphere a little bit, real quickly?
Yeah, please.
So the way that the manosphere works, right? Like they're focused on like understanding like female nature. I understand like or I studied female nature, but I also studied human nature, right? Kind of like what you study with metaphysics, which is like kind of like a form of philosophy, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So with the manosphere, really, and I would just want to say, like I'm not a part of it, but I do respect it, and I love the people in there, right? There's different pills. There's the black pill. So there's the blue pill, which is like they call them the normies. I don't like these labels, but it's like basically anybody that's not a part of the manosphere is called like like they're just not. They call them the
Blue pill.
normies. Exactly,
Right.
blue pilled. But then from there, it's like it comes from the matrix. It's like you take the red pill, you're awakened, right? So then there's the red pill, which goes into the stuff like men's right and stuff like that. But then from the red pill is the black pill. Then from the black pill, there's also the opposite of the black pill, which is like nihilism, depression. It is the white pill, right? It's a combination of kind of like all the pills. It's meant to like redeem the black pill. But the red pill, it teaches us a lot of great things about dating. There's a lot of like truths, and basically it came as a reaction to feminism, specifically more modern day feminism or third wave feminism. So there was like the patriarchy, and the patriarchy originally, like, it gets a bad connotation, but it technically, like, if you actually look at the definition, is not necessarily a bad thing. But there was a time when men controlled everything and they weren't very good to women, and then came first wave feminism, which I agree with. But then there came second wave feminism, and eventually got to third wave feminism, where you have girls, like, just just doing really crazy stuff, saying stuff like all men are trash, all men are bad, all men are evil, stuff like that, right? As a result of third wave feminism, and also a lot of the marriage laws in the US that are, and like family laws that are stacked against men, that's where the red pill kind of came. It was a reaction to third wave feminism. At least this is how I see it. I could be wrong, but it was a reaction to third wave feminism, similar to how third wave feminism was a reaction. Feminism in general was a reaction to the patriarchy. Like history repeats itself. It's just cycles like a pendulum.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I love that, the way you describe it. So let me ask you this. What do you think, um, as far as men's rights, what should men be focused on in 2022?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of the things that they say, and a big part of the reason why I agree with it is because if we look at the male self-deletion rate, right? And I'll say self-deletion because of the YouTube, right? But the male self-deletion rate, do you know what it is?
Um, it's high.
It's 3.5 times higher than women.
Okay.
And it's like, that's insane, but we don't hear about that kind of stuff. A lot of people know about the word misogyny, but very few people know about misandry. And it's like,
Which is,
which is it's like the hatred of men. It's like, and it does exist, and it's like, what the manosphere does is like they're working to promote that kind of stuff, right? And I think that there's a lot of people in the manosphere that are doing it in a good way, but it's becoming more toxic. And there's that concept of red pill rage where you're just going to go too far, and then if you study this too much, eventually you'll hate women, and it's just something
right.
that I don't want to be a part of.
Right. And that's where isn't that where the black pill comes from, or would the
Yeah.
black pill argue that that's not where it comes from?
So the black pill, so like the red pill isn't designed to hate women. It's more about they say like the understanding female nature. But the black pill, and I respect a lot of the guys in the black pill, especially since a lot of the people in the black pill are Asian, right? What happens with the black pill is they believe that the only thing that matters to women is looks. Looks are everything to get the girl. But they take a very nihilistic approach. Is just a lot of people, they're in the black pill, and they just have so much depression to eventually like they self-delete, and they cause a lot of issues, right? But the black pill, like the way that the black pill operates is basically it's based on looks, and that's everything. But the problem with the black pill, right, is that although looks are important, they think that it's everything, and they take their statistics, they take their numbers, their data from online dating apps and speed dating. And if you do that, like relationships aren't online dating and speed dating. It's only going to be based on looks. So they think that they're right because of where they get their data from. And it's like, oh, the black pill is the truth because of this. It's like, where are you getting your sources from?
When I've watched some of the red pill and black pill stuff, I had a similar assessment that there is value here because there are things that are antiquated in our legal system, right? Like it makes perfect sense to have alimony when a marriage dissolves if women aren't legally allowed to work.
Exactly. It's outdated.
When and this is true, and I know we don't want to really get into legal stuff, but it's just a basic principle of the United States that you're innocent until proven guilty. And that is somewhat eroding with the advent of social media because people make a conclusion before there's actually a court date, and courts can go extremely slow. So I understand why people want to come to a conclusion, but what I see in it is that, there are I know some men personally that got married, and then when they got divorced, all they had to do was raise their voice. And once they raised their voice, they lost custody of their kids and were, so there was no recourse in that situation. It was just like, sorry, you're in the machine now, and the machine doesn't treat you well. And so I can understand part of the desire for men to stand up for their rights is the injustice there.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I support, a lot of the things that they talk about, but some things they just go too far, which is why I don't want to be a part of it. That's why I don't align myself with, any, like religions or like political affiliations. It's rather I support values, like treat everybody with kindness, love, empathy, and respect. But you have to be able to defend your values, because you cannot be a man of character. You cannot be a man of values if you cannot defend them. Like just like in my country, where I came from.
Right. And I don't know a whole lot about Myanmar.
Myanmar.
But I understand that, just a few years ago, it had a different name, didn't it, legally?
Yeah, Burma.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing about freedom. No, it's all good, man. That's the thing about freedom and stuff like that. Freedom isn't free.
Right. Right. It really isn't. And when you think of what you're talking about, again, I can see why you would not have problems in the dating field, because like you said, you're a man of character, and I'd like you to explain what that means, because there are people out there that maybe don't realize that that actually has a lot of value.
Yeah.
And before you respond to that, I do want to bring up the point that you mentioned about Black Pill, that if they're drawing the data from apps that are basically swipe apps and speed dating, yeah, I think I would agree with your assessment that
Mhm,
looks do determine first impressions,
mhm.
and that has an effect. And
Yeah.
once you get beyond that, you get past essentially the physical element, and then you start looking at, well, is there actually compatibility for a relationship?
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. And of course, like the black pill, obviously I'm not too versed into it, but from what I've seen, it's primarily that's where they get the data from. They may get data from some other places, but that's primarily where they get the data from.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So then tell me about what a man of character is in your mind.
Yeah. So, and I want to say that I would consider myself a man of character, or at least I strive to be a man of character every day. I don't like to like, like call myself like that's why, I don't use terms like alpha or beta too much. Like because like the whole concept of alpha, it's hilarious to me, right? Like an alpha wouldn't call himself an alpha. It's funny to me. So the way that I see it is, it's about trying to be a man of character every single day. And it's like like I have a lot of Christian values. I wouldn't consider myself a Christian, but it's kind of like, trying to be more like Jesus, right? Or like trying to be a man of integrity, a man of honor, a man of values, a man that, stands for what is right, even when it is hard, and it can be very hard, especially nowadays, but it's like, you got to do, what is best for society. What you have to do the right thing. You have to do the good thing, even when it can be tough.
Excellent. Yeah. What do you think is how does a person develop this character, right? Because if the premise is that a man has to do the right thing, then the implied assumption is they know what right is.
Mhm.
And so where do you derive your either morals or your ethics or your standard or principles about
Yeah.
what is right and what isn't?
That's the thing, like morality, like when we get into that kind of stuff, it can be very deep conversation, but it's also very tough, right? But it's not about, trying to be perfect. It's more about trying to be, achieve excellence, right? So we're chasing excellence. We're trying to do more right than more wrong, right? So it's like the way that I gauge things, I don't like to judge people. I judge myself. I try not to judge people, but it's like, because you have to have grace for each other, right? But it's like, the way that I see things is, there are going to be times when I slip up. I'm not perfect. There are going to be times when, maybe I get a little bit emotional, right? But it's like at the end of the day, as long as I'm putting more good into the world, as long as I'm doing things that benefit society, more than detract, more than take down society, then I feel like I'm living a good life.
Okay, I can see that. That makes sense. I know for me, one of the ways there's two principles that guide me, and it's love and truth. And
Mhm.
I think that if we had more love and more truth in the world, that there would be a better world for all of us. And I'm not trying to idealize it all in any style, but I do think that just on an individual level, if people were more truthful and more loving, there would be a lot less suffering in the world. And that is
Yeah.
also one of the reasons why I feel like, you know, whatever a person would, I had wheat waffles rate my face too, and he gave me I think a 5.5.
Nice.
And so, I thought that was low, but then I kind of knew the wheat waffles from my eye goes lower, right? Like, so I looked at you and I saw you higher. I looked at me and I saw myself higher. And then get beyond the physical aspects of it, and out of that black pill, I'm not going to call it nonsense, but when you make it the in primary cornerstone of your argument, it does become nonsense, in my opinion.
Hmm.
It's a factor for sure, but it's
Hmm.
not the whole factor. And once you get beyond that, it's like, well, the man of character that I strive to be is more loving and more truthful.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have been truthful to the point of being very hurtful. And I didn't have the love factor,
Hmm.
right? Like I was very direct, very pointed,
Hmm.
and it didn't produce the results that I wanted, even
Yeah.
though in my mind, I have the principle, well, then truth should just make things better.
Yeah.
And so there's a delicate dance there for me that I'm trying to do the same thing as you. It's like I'm trying to put
Yeah.
more good into the world. And the way I look at that is I'm trying to put more love and truth into the world. And truth is also can be slippery because not everybody's truth is the same. So you got the big capital truth, which is what I would call universal forces. And then you have the personal truth, like my favorite color is X. That's a personal truth. In language, I usually like to call those opinions, but we have rights to our opinions. And that is something that is also important. And that's the truth that I hold, is that people have the right to an opinion, even if I think that opinion's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Even, I mean, definitely. And it's like, like that's the thing. We're obviously like we're supposed to be talking about dating, but it's like it kind of goes into like, the whole society, right? We've had, like so much of society, has been pushing down against men for so long. This is like not even decades. This is like even more longer than decades, I'd say, for a while now, pushing down on men. And now, it's led to a lot of men, resorting to different things, right? From stuff like OnlyFans, from stuff like, just, very depression, and the stuff that comes with that, right? The silent killer. And it's like, there are men that are fighting back, but it's like we have to be careful. But it's like, I think that we've been going down so far this way that we're coming back this way. We're about to see a correction, but it's just I hope that we don't overcorrect. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I look at my parents' generation, and that's why I was unprepared for the dating world. Now, granted, I was focused in school from 20 to 28, prime dating age. You could argue red pillars might say, oh no, you needed to acquire some wealth and get into your 30s before that's going to happen. But point is, I was super focused on what my schooling was, and the schooling that I was involved with, metaphysics, philosophy. People aren't driving Lamborghinis or even Lexuses, when they get a philosophy degree. And especially, I went to a school that was not accredited. So it's like, I'm making it harder on myself to get the quote unquote wealth. But primarily what I saw looking at it, because I like to dance like you too.
Nice.
I not as like I watched a couple of your dance videos and I was like, good, he knows the steps. And I'm more of a freestyle, more of an EDM type of guy, just
Okay.
bounce around type of thing. But I can get down on the dance floor.
Hey.
Here was the problem when I was in school. My school required us not to drink and not to do any types of drugs. And we were doing things like meditation, astral projection, chakra spinning, all sorts of crazy stuff out there. And basically the theory was that these drugs and alcohol were going to have a negative impact on the subtle bodies that we were trying to develop awareness of. So when I would go into the club, I would go by myself because nobody in my class wanted to do what I was doing, right? Like they're at home with their kids or at home with their books or at home with, just themselves and content. So I was at the club, I would walk in by myself and I would be the only one not drinking there. And that created a barrier where I couldn't feel like I could approach a girl because I had this metric of like, well, if they've had a drink in them and I haven't, that creates a weird thing that I'm not going to be comfortable moving forward. So I didn't date a whole lot in my 20s. I had, I think, 3 girlfriends, and for some people that's a lot, and some people that's not a lot at all. But the point is that I saw what you were seeing is like this thing of third wave feminism of like, there are no consequences. You just go out there and have your, hot girl summer. You just go out there and do whatever you want and be with whoever you want. And there's no consequences to it. And that's something that I think in some ways is a generational thing, because you can't go back and replace the life that you've lived, right? Like your 20s were your 20s. And if you were taught that that's the thing you should do, then that's, in my opinion, like going to have a lasting effect, not just for your entire life, but what you pass on to your children, if you have children. And so there's a course correction where a person has an opportunity to recognize that maybe what they were taught wasn't actually the full picture. It was part of it, but it wasn't the full picture. And I had the same thing, but I came from the other side. I came from the side that like people didn't lie, they didn't cheat, they didn't steal, and they treated other people with respect. But match that up with my insecurities. I was a very jealous boyfriend, even in high school, right? Like I broke up with girls in 8th and 9th grade because of my jealousy. And so I wasn't even set up for success because I was insecure. And it's taken me a long time to get to that point of security. And it doesn't matter, like if you look at your quote unquote dating sexual market value or your dating market value, if you don't have confidence in yourself, you're really low on the totem pole, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm 5'11", issues 6 foot, you know,
Yeah.
like somewhat intelligent, blah 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 blah. I hit some of the key components that would put me on a higher bar, but if there's not the respect for the self,
Mhm.
it really didn't matter.
So that's the thing, right? So that's the thing. Because we think about it, right? And when we think about stuff like the red pill, right? And they talk about S&P and stuff, we have to think about this is when it comes to taking advice from anybody, a dating coach or anybody, right? The people that you take advice from, you will become more like, and you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So if you're constantly watching red pill content about guys that are saying that all women cheat, or if a guy says something like she's not your girl, it's just your turn, like that guy is traumatized. People go into the red pill because they've been hurt by women, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's what happens. It's a negative reaction. And it's like I've been hurt by women. I've had girls break up with me, and stuff like that. But I still choose, to learn from those situations to prevent it, because not all women are like that. Just like not all men are bad either. And it's like
Right.
you're going to become more like the person that you listen to. So if you listen to guys that just talk about, girls all the time, they constantly talk about girls and girls and girls and how to sleep with as many girls as possible, you are going to become the kind of guy that sleeps with as many girls as possible. And I did do that kind of stuff. But what you don't realize, when you're younger, is that those guys aren't good role models, because a lot of times, they're traumatized, and you're going to become a guy who is traumatized. It's like it's a cycle. But on the flip side, and that's part of the reason why I dance, right? A lot of these guys, these red pill dating coaches and stuff like that, right? And I respect them, but they don't have the level of confidence or self-esteem that I have, because I can go out and I can talk to anybody, I can dance with anybody, especially girls, in front of like dozens of people, maybe even hundreds, right, one day. And I can do that, but these guys can't. Like you ask a lot of these guys who have like slept with 2,000 girls, and it's like, okay, dance on stage right now, and they'll be like, oh my god, I'm so shy. It's like, yeah, that's what I thought.
Right.
you know
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a interesting point there too, that in culture, we kind of develop this acceptance of trauma.
Mhm.
There's this phrase I hear once in a while, and it's sometimes listening to these red pillars, where the TikTok is saying, the woman on TikTok is saying, oh, I don't want to catch feels. I don't want to catch feelings. And so as a metaphysician, I look at that and I study that and I think, well, emotion is absolutely necessary, because in metaphysical theory, the emotional level of mind connects your conscious mind, what we're aware of with our 5 senses, and our soul, our inner self. And if you catch feels, then you're actually saying, even though you don't know this, that you are so traumatized that you are protected having sex with people and not emotionally available.
Mhm.
But if you're not careful, you could have a chink in the armor and you could catch feels. And my argument, and I haven't really stated this clearly in any of my videos before, but this gives me the perfect platform to do it. My argument as a metaphysician is that sex should be catching feels. Like you should already have the feels
Yeah,
before you
absolutely.
have sex.
Sex is a
And
beautiful thing.
right, it is. And our culture, there are aspects of it that are really promoting, even though they don't understand this, that it's just okay to go out there and have casual sex where your bodies bounce, but the mind and the emotions aren't engaged.
Mhm.
Because on some psychological level, it's still happening. But if you're checked out from it, you're just adding more layers to the
Yeah.
complications.
Here's the thing onto that, right? So think about this, right? The way that social media works, like negativity is so polarizing. Negativity is just so, it grows like wildfire, right? It's much easier to, do bad things, I would say, than to do good things, right? Because it's so easy to hate. And what happens on social media is that it's designed to, promote things that, people want to see the most, right? And the most polarizing things, the most attention grabbing things are negativity, the bad stuff. If you look at most romantic comedies, there's almost like always like tragedy, right? Or if you listen to most, top 40 music, there's always stuff about infidelity, there's always stuff about drugs, there's always stuff about alcohol, stuff like that, very bad stuff, because it's easier to relate to negative emotions, I would say, especially with social media, and it pushes that. And then you go to platforms like TikTok where they're designed to push those negative things, and it's like the good stuff, the boring, they call it, the good stuff is essentially kind of boring, but boring is good. It's like, you talk to any veterans, right? Or people that have gone through PTSD, they don't want action. They want boring. Boring is good because you don't realize how naive you are until you actually see combat, until you actually see action. And it's like, oh, wait. Like when you see people, I try not to be too graphic. Like when you see the graphic stuff that happens, like go check
Yeah.
out Rambo 4, guys. When you see the
Right.
graphic stuff that happens, it's like, oh my God, this is real, But then at that point, it's too late.
Right. And on the dating scene, that's what I've witnessed. And alcohol, like I enjoy alcohol on occasions, but when people need alcohol to be with somebody, to
Mhm.
sleep with somebody, like it's acceptable in our society. But I'm hoping conversations like this will show up that, hey, even though this is normal, it's actually
Yeah,
not good for us, right? This is
yeah.
actually not healthy for us to need alcohol to sleep with someone.
That's the thing. Okay, so like a lot of guys, they probably think that, oh, I'm terrible in bed or anything like that. I'm not. But here's the thing: it's like you cannot get good at sex, right? And whether you believe in premarital marriage or not, right? You cannot get good in sex unless you have sex with one person in a long-term relationship over a long period of time, right? Because there's opportunities for feedback and improvement. If you're just having sex with a lot of different girls, they probably didn't like it, it probably hurt, and they're probably just, I call it starfishing, right? Because they don't really have to put any work. But with one person, it's kind of like, being a master of, a jack of all trades, or being a master in one discipline. So it's like, when you understand, female anatomy and female nature, and like how female pleasure works, and it's like you realize that, hey, if you have to sleep with a girl, like, I'll tell you right now, if you have to turn the lights off when you're having sex with a girl, you're probably not good. And also, if you have to, use alcohol with a girl, you're probably not good either, because we know that if we drink a lot of alcohol, we pee more, because it kind of what is it they call it, a diuretic?
Dehydrates us.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
dehydrates us. Same thing with the, with the, I don't know if you can say, the V word, right? Same thing down there
Yeah,
with
I
the
don't know.
girls, right? So it's like it dehydrates that. So, they call it, like, is she wet or well not? It's like she's gonna be very dry, and it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna be like, it's like you're making a fire.
Right.
People don't think
Right.
about that.
Yeah, and so we're taking, in my opinion, a pretty sacred act. And as a guy, one of the things that I was blessed with was a good example of what a healthy relationship was. And
Mhm.
so, and like, I don't think my mom's gonna be too upset that I say this. My mom's only partner was my dad,
There's
right?
no problem with that.
Right. And so what that meant for me though is that I grew up in this almost like Puritan sense of like, oh, well, it's going to be, pretty pure.
Mhm.
And, I learned that that wasn't the case. And obviously I've let go of the V card long, long, long ago. And I'm like you, where I'm a fan of premarital sex.
Yeah,
But I also, this is something that I don't talk about it often because it is pretty personal, but this is a place where we can actually share this for,
yeah,
an educational purpose for other people. I've only had sex with people I loved.
that's a beautiful
And
thing.
that meant that I was going to be somewhat okay if there was an unwanted pregnancy. But I also understood that an unwanted pregnancy in this country, a man does not have a right once he lets go. So the
Yeah.
way I tell it to my girlfriend and just tell it to myself is that it's my job. If I don't want to have a child, it's my job to make sure that doesn't happen,
Mhm. Yeah,
because that's the ownership a man can take. And I
yeah.
do believe that that can save a lot of these red pillars if
Mhm.
they recognize that they actually have the responsibility. The baby doesn't come by themselves.
Mhm.
Now, we could get into the things about maybe having uh, better rights with like financial relief from
Yeah.
that if it's not a child that you want. But in general, I do think it's healthy to recognize the man's influence. And
Mhm.
the man's influence is that I need to be responsible with this, because the woman has to be responsible for the 9 months and
Yeah.
then the nursing time afterwards. But my responsibility as a man, like, I looked at dating, I could never date casually. And that's why I could only have
Yeah.
sex with people I love. Now, minus the first couple of girls I slept with, I didn't understand love. So I thought I loved them, but I didn't understand it. But it was as
Yeah,
close as I knew. So I just think it's a good thing for your audience and my audience to consider the concept
absolutely.
that there is a lot of responsibility that the man has. And if we don't own up to it, that's not very manly. That's actually not going to help us. And I know some people, it's too late for that. Well, now it's time to man up with the current circumstances. And that's an individual thing. What does that mean for that person? I don't know.
Yeah,
But I know for me, when I look at it from a societal standpoint, I say men have a really awesome power here that they're getting too overwhelmed by the pleasure, the
hmm,
release of it, that they're not thinking long term. And I do think that, to make society better, men and women have to both think and feel long term. It's not just
yeah,
one or other, it's both of us. But I can, if we're talking about men, this is a place I'd like to call them out, right? Like, and I call myself out on it because there
mhm,
are times where maybe I wasn't as careful as I should have been, but at least I was with somebody that I could tolerate somewhat.
yeah.
Um, at least.
See, so let's kind of expand on that a little bit, right? So about personal responsibility, which is something that I wholly agree on, right? Now, of course, there's the female side, and there's guys in the red pill and stuff like that that are fighting, for men's rights against females. They're calling females, I don't want to say females, like calling women out, right? And I do appreciate that. I hope that they don't go too far. But what I prefer is, if people from their own communities call their own communities out and hold them accountable. So as men, we need to hold other men accountable, and as women need to hold women accountable. That we need to support each other, whenever like a woman is supporting men and whenever a man is supporting women, right? Obviously, keeping balance with everything. But the way that I see it, right, and maybe you follow Jordan Peterson as well, right? It's like, before you judge anybody else, take, like, or you get your family in order, right? So it's, the way that I approach dating, and it's very simple actually, but it's not necessarily easy per se, but it's self-improvement. You improve yourself, you work on yourself, you do everything you can to accept the things that you can't change, but you change the things that you can. You build yourself up. You can learn skills like dancing, cooking, singing. You can make money, stuff like that. You can learn how to fight, all that kind of stuff, and you build yourself up. And as a man, like you might start here, and maybe like a woman's value in like the dating place is here, and maybe other guys are genetically blessed and they're like here before, above you. But you keep improving, and eventually you're gonna get to a point to where you're here. And it's like all that hard work. Yes, you had to work harder, but it's not like you are only available to one woman. Now all the girls are now attracted to you, or most of the girls are attracted to you. So it's like, you keep improving, you keep working on yourself instead of trying to learn how to manipulate women into sex, like a lot of pickup artists do. you know you level yourself up, and eventually you're being honest with your intentions. With a woman, you're authentic, you're honest, you're very direct, and you lead the interaction, and boom, like, girls are going to be attracted to you because they understand that, hey, this is a man. I don't want to say a high value man. This is a man that understands his worth. This is a man that understands what he has. And it's like, you don't hate on women, you simply decline to date women that don't appreciate you, right? So it's not about like, oh, I hate my ex or whatever. It's about, hey, look, man, like, it's like, hey, I like you, and I want to see if we're a good fit, instead of I want you to like me. So it's like, or it's like, some guys say, try to see if you even like her. No, it's about, are you guys a good fit together, right? Equality, right? But it's like,
Right.
hey, you work on yourself. Girls, they come in, and then it's like, hey, if a girl is behaving negatively towards you, if she's saying stuff like like that are very toxic, if she's saying stuff expecting you to pay for everything and stuff like that, what do? You simply decline. You don't like do and just like hate on her. You don't blast her on social media. You simply tell her, hey, respectfully, like, I don't want to be in this relationship. Thank you for your time, or something like that, right? And then there's going to be plenty of other women that are competing for you
Right.
because they know your worth.
Right. And what I love about that is, again, it's recognizing the place that you have personal responsibility. You have personal responsibility to be the best person you can be.
Yes.
And and that's some of the things that I've noticed in maybe more of the black pill, but some in the red pill community, about men, where they just kind of throw up their hands and like walk away. And I can understand that. And sometimes that's probably the appropriate thing. Like, I'm not in each guy's head as he's thinking about his decisions. But what I try to do and what I try to teach in my practice as a life coach and what I try to do in my personal life with my partner is take responsibility for what's mine and also continue to educate myself on the nature of men and the nature of women. Like right now, her and I were studying Alison Armstrong, who is an excellent author and workshop provider that helps me understand my girlfriend a little bit more,
Yeah.
even though we've been friends for years. And only recently started dating like last year. We really came to an opportunity where the education can continue. And I love the fact that we can do it to get together. And so if men are looking for a long-term relationship, that would be one quality I would recommend looking for is, can you find a woman that wants to grow with you, right? Like, because I've dated some that wanted to grow, but they wanted to grow in different directions. And that doesn't really work for a household, but it works. And there's no shade thrown to those people. It's just the fact that I needed somebody that was more compatible with the direction that I was going.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful and wonderful. And when that can happen, I think men can feel the sense of empowerment. So there's a sense of where men need to be better at choosing who to chase or who to date, essentially, too, right? And sometimes that's getting back to what you talked about being a man of character and recognizing what it is that you value and appreciating that in other people. And it doesn't mean that personally, doesn't mean that I dislike or hate people. It just means there are certain things that are going to be more attractive to me than other things.
Yeah.
And I have my reasons for that. And I would argue that they're based in metaphysics, but on the outside looking in, it's just Rory's opinion. And like, I'm not going to get butthurt if you say, or somebody says, Rory, that's wrong. I was like, well, it's right for me. But if you have a convincing argument, I'm going to listen to you. And even if you don't have a convincing argument, I'm still going to listen to you because that's something I value as a man, is being able to listen to criticism and kind of receive it. Receive
Constructive
the person.
criticism. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, the way that I kind of like, go into like the kind of way that I approach dating, it's like, you're right. You do have to acknowledge, what do you want out of a relationship? What do you want? Are you just in a stage where you just want casual sex and then, and then you go from there? Or do you want a, committed long-term relationship? I will say 100%, I'm 100% confident a committed long-term relationship is better for society, than just casual sex. And also, like, a lot of people don't realize the trauma and all the bad negative stuff that comes with casual sex lifestyle, right? But it's like, people think, a committed relationship is bad, it's or boring. It's actually very fulfilling. It's very fulfilling, to be one day, like a father figure, to a young man, right? It's very fulfilling. And it can also be very, like physically fun, of course, but like, but it's like, you can, as a man, you can determine the kind of woman that you attract. But it's like this, right? If you look like me, you're gonna have to put in a lot of work to attract beautiful women, right? But it's up to you to put in the work. But it's like, if you put in a little bit of effort into the right things, you can attract the whatever type of woman you want. So if you want like a certain type of girl that has a certain type of career or a certain type of job, you can put in the work to put yourself in the social circles to where you're more like available to those kinds of women. So it's like, you can control your environment, you can control the things that you can control, which make it more probable that you're going to get the desired result. You can't control other people, but you can control yourself and your circumstances.
Beautiful. Love it. One question I had, why do you think, I agree, full disclosure, but why do you think casual sex is bad for society?
History. It's like, if you look at history, anytime people have started going too far into sexuality, where they talk about like really crazy things, or like people are just having sex with everybody, it always ruins the societies.
So it destroys the fabric of
Society.
kind of the society.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll piggyback on that. And this is my assessment, is that because there are a lot of men out there that feel neglected because they're just average, they're average like you and I, we could argue, like, some people are going to find you more attractive than me and vice versa. Like, I respect that and love that about how that is the truth. But let's just call ourselves average for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
We're average guys. And it sounds like you're in a committed relationship, right?
Yes.
Okay. I am as well. And you look
Nice.
happy. I'm happy. So that's great. And that makes sense because we are men of character and we value who we are And that's what, we've each gone through the fire in our own ways. But what I'm seeing in the online community is that there are a bunch of guys that didn't piece it together yet. And so they don't have somebody that they're willing to die for, that they're willing to fight for, that they're willing to protect. And men's energy is a protector energy.
Yes.
And so when we're not able to protect somebody because we feel neglected by them, that destroys the fabric of society. Because now there are a bunch of men out there that, like you said, are nihilistic and don't care. They're like waiting for the day for society to collapse. Like that's literally their perspective, because that's how hurt they are. And so the message that I would have to any of them that's listening to you or to listening to me is to recognize that the fight, if you want to see a fight, is for a good world and a happy world.
Yeah.
And you're a missing piece in it. So once you make the decision to get into the race, get into the fight, you start improving your own life and improve your own outlook. It's going to attract somebody that might want to go along that journey with you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the world doesn't look so bleak. It's not shades of gray, it's shades of the rainbow. And that's something that I'm not saying that, you have to date if you don't want to date. Like that's fine if you don't want to. But I do think society is better when people genuinely care about one another.
Yeah.
And casual sex doesn't really show that, right? Because you're not actually getting to know them. You're just using it for a release. You're using it for fun. You're using it for ego. You're using it for building yourself up. Because, and this is the thing I didn't mention before, is like men going to the red pill in the manosphere is kind of a consequence of being traumatized. Yeah. Well, women going into third wave feminism is being traumatized as well, right? Like, so they've had hurt. And so they've tried to piece together why it is. And so it's just the two opposite sides. And, conversations like this, I'm hoping are going to bridge the gap and realize that, like, it's so fascinating that forgiveness, love, truth, like nobody has to lose in this.
Yeah.
That's kind of my takeaway. And I know we're getting close to the end of our time. So that's kind of what I would conclude with as my takeaway of this conversation, is that no matter who you are as a man or a woman, you don't have to lose in your own mind, but it requires you to take accountability and to step up to what you need to address. And that's going to be individualistic for each person.
Yeah, and like like the kind of building off on that, right, with the whole manosphere concept. Like I respect the manosphere. I mean, I consider a lot of them, to be like men that have been hurt, and I don't want to just like put them down, because their traumas, their stuff are very real. It's like the way that I view it. It's not about going against women. It's not about like fighting women or anything like that. The way that I approach it, like how do we kind of like fix society? It's not about putting down women, or like third wave feminists per se, although like I strongly despise a lot of them. It's more about rewarding the women that are like very nurturing, the women that do appreciate men, that love men. Reward them instead of just having sex with the third wave feminists, like the girls are like crazy, right? Reward the women, give positive reinforcement to the women that are being good, to us. Reward them, and they will take care of themselves, right? It's like, let the third wave feminists, like do their things, right? And maybe other guys will disagree. Who knows? I don't know everything. But the way I see it is reward the people that are good to you, and ignore the other people unless they are hurting you. And I do recognize that we have been hurt by third wave feminists and a lot of these things, but it's like we have to be careful to make the distinction between a good woman and not just calling all women crazy, right? Because some guys are starting to do that, and that's very dangerous territory when you start to make just generalizations.
Right. Yeah. And it's back to it's like the same version of third wave feminism. If all men are evil, then all women are evil. It's like, it's the same polarization.
It's the same thing. It's like you have become the monster you are trying to destroy.
Right. Yeah. And never a good thing.
Never a good thing. Never a good. I mean, look at my country,
Yeah.
Like, bro.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're here in the States, and I'm glad that you're on YouTube and giving men and women just a new perspective, your perspective. It's a very valuable perspective. And, maybe we can chat again sometime in the future, because I feel like in some ways we could keep going on a lot of different topics. And, if we have new things that we're learning, I'm sure I'd love to hear what's going on in your life.
Yeah, for sure. No worries, man. Yeah, I'm definitely down.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me. And to all of you, You can reach me at innerhealthtoday@gmail if you want dream interpretations or if you want life coaching. And how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is AMQF Dating and Relationships. I don't currently have a course. I do have like some pre-built out courses and stuff like that. Will I go eventually into teaching this kind of stuff? Absolutely. But it's like I'm not a very salesy guy. That's why, like YouTube is a search engine, right? So it's like if you want my help, if you want my advice, if you want to become more like me, take my advice. And if you want, and I'm gonna have hundreds of hours of free content on YouTube. But if you want to support me and if you want to pay me for like stuff like a step by step, everything you need to know in an efficient way, because there's so much, like so many grifters, so much scammers, so much, so much information out there, it can be overwhelming. If you guys want a step by step guide to what you need to know, I'm calling it the Healthy Dating Blueprint. It's not out yet, but I am building it out. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel for when it comes out. But if you guys just want to book in a call with me, guys can go to my YouTube channel. The links are all there. But yeah, I'm excited to help you guys out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me, Roy.
All right.